Okay, so we're live now. And today we're talking about Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. Osman? I still don't know how to pronounce her surname.
I think it's Oseman.
Oseman. I say Oseman, but then, I don't know. I'm just so bad with surnames, especially with books. Okay, so I'll start with my normal first question. And what was your initial response to the book, and what would you give it out of 5?
Go ahead, Michaela, go ahead.
Okay, I don't know, I was kind of in two minds. I mean, I did really enjoy the book, but I guess I'd probably give it maybe 3 stars. It was good. It was a good book. I enjoyed it. It just felt a little bit like it was ticking a lot of boxes, and it was the kind of thing that you think is probably going to date very, very quickly with all the things of Tumblr and Game of Thrones and all these kind of mentions. And it seemed very current, but the kind of current that's not going to be current in a year or two's time. So I enjoyed it, and I was glad we read it, but it's probably not something I would have picked up had we not been reading it for this.
Okay. And what would you give it out of 5? Oh, sorry.
3, I think.
Sorry. My head's all over the place. Sorry.
I really enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised. I haven't read her other books, so I wasn't comparing or anything. But I read a few YA books I hadn't been so pleased with recently, and I didn't know that it was a diverse book going into it. I literally had no idea, and so when I went into it and there was all, I mean, I know you felt like it was ticking a lot of boxes, and it is a bit upon reflection I kind of see that a little bit, but I didn't feel like it at the time. I was just wow, this is really diverse, this is great. And because I hadn't really ever seen a character identify openly as bisexual in a book before, so that was really great. And I think I gave it 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads originally, because it is a really good contemporary. It's one of my favorites that I've read in a while. So.
No, I totally agree with you there. I really enjoyed it. I've read her second book, her first book, and so I was quite excited for this because I really liked how it's really current. Because I do think on reflection it might be bad for if you were to read this in the future, and maybe even just a couple of years, some things you might not get as much as I do right now. But I think because I'm reading it now and it is current, I really loved it all, and I liked the diversity, and I think I don't know whether you can say I'm really kind of torn about ticking the boxes, just because you can, because it didn't really feel like it was at the time. I think they did have a lot of the boxes ticked, I guess, so that you could kind of think that maybe it's a bit much. But for me, I just loved it, and I really, really liked it, and I gave it 5 out of 5 as well.
I do feel bad, because I do say a lot that there should be more diversity in YA, because it is very 17-year-old white girl. There's a lot of that. So when there is a book that is more diverse, I feel bad for calling it on stuff like that. But I don't know. Maybe just to me, it just felt like it was maybe a little bit overkill. But I don't read an awful lot of contemporary YA, so maybe that's just how I interpret it. I'm not sure.
I think it's quite hard to kind of get the balance right, because sometimes you can have too much, sometimes you can have too little, and it's hard to get it right, I think.
Maybe it's because there is so little that when there is more than almost token diversity, then it kind of flags in my head as seeming too much, which is probably more a reflection of the books I read than anything else, because there should be more diversity, definitely. So yeah, now I feel bad for picking that up.
No, I get what you mean though, because I know as well, I read a blog post or an interview with her or something like that where it was saying that in Solitaire she didn't specify anything, and she only said afterwards, oh, this character was this and this character was this, and so she was very she really wanted to make sure in this book that she was this character is mixed race, this character is this race, this character is this sexuality, and so it probably came off like that, but I think her intention was good. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't read anything else by her, but yeah, I mean, the intention was definitely good, and it was quite nice that things like sexuality and ethnicity they were pointed out, but it wasn't a plot point, whereas in some books they make such a big thing about a character being bisexual or black or whatever that it becomes more of an issue than it should be. So it was nice to see that it was organic to the story and not a selling point, if you like.
I think I agree with you most about saying because it kind of can feel like overkill because so many other books lack it. So
Yeah.
You haven't read Solitaire, have you, Michaela? Her first
No, I
book?
haven't.
Okay, that kind of excludes my first question because at the start of this book, there's a little, when she sees a school on fire, it kind of has a connection to the other book, and I was just going to ask about that, but
I heard there was a connection, but I was like, I don't know where that was because I haven't read the other one.
Yeah, the other one is really good as well. I recommend that, but I'm kind of biased because I really like it. Okay, so what did you think of the writing style and Frances's voice, like, as that?
I really liked it, and like, I mean, I've seen her. I saw her talk at an event, and I just like can't really believe she's 21 because I'm 20, and I'm just like, how are you doing this? Like, but I thought I liked it. It was very easy to read. Like I was just saying to you, Ali, before, I read it in like an evening. Like I literally sat down, and I only meant to read like 100 pages that night, and I just ended up flying through it because it was so easy to read. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really liked it. Like I said, Lily, I mean, I'm 22, but it didn't feel like like someone in their 30s trying to sound like a 17-year-old. It sounded like it was a really organic voice. It was really nice. And it did remind me of when I was kind of, I'm not a million miles away, but when I was that age, and it seemed very natural, not forced, and like somebody trying to make it sound like their impression of a 17-year-old talking. So I really liked it, and it wasn't all the kind of mentions like Tumblr and Twitter and Instagram, that stuff. Again, it could have felt really contrived, but it didn't. It was really well done. I really liked it, and I will confess I did only just start reading the book on Friday, and I finished it just before my fence started to blow down about 3 or 4 hours ago. So it was a nice, easy read, and yeah, I did really like the style of writing.
Yeah, I agree with it. I think the reason it was such an easy read because it didn't feel forced at all. Because I think with a lot of books, when it's, I don't know, say a 30-year-old man trying to have the voice of like a 16-year-old girl, sometimes things just don't sit right, and so it's harder to sort of get through it, whereas this just felt just so real. And especially for me, I just found it incredible because I am the same age as Frances at the start of the book, and so going through it and like seeing her go through school and stuff and having like these thoughts which I'm having at this time, it's just like I found it really, really odd, and especially considering I actually want to go to Cambridge and she did too, and it was just little things like that which I was just like, this is amazing, this is me in a book.
I've got to say, I do think it did remind me when she's revising for exams and all the pressure of doing well and getting into the uni you want to get into. That really did resonate with me, and it did make me think, I'm so glad there's space behind me.
I was the same. I was like really, and there was like a uni. It wasn't Cambridge, but there was a uni I really wanted to get into, and there was a lot of pressure to get the grades. And like, I remember, like, it really resonated with me as well. Like, it was one of those books that made me like really nostalgic for sixth form, and I just felt really encapsulated like how sixth form is and like what it is like to have all the pressure of exams and UCAS and everything.
I think it captures it really well how even I think anyone could read this book and either as like being like at the age as the character, you can kind of connect with it at the time, but even looking back at thinking, oh, I remember feeling like that. I think it just it's really good because it does have just that whole organicness of it. Sorry. So did you like that this book only had one point of view, like not including the transcripts? Because I was thinking about how most of the other books we read had more than one point of view. So what did you think of that?
I mean, I mean, generally as a rule, I prefer books that have more than one viewpoint, just because it gives you different perspectives of the story and it saves it from being too one note. But I think for this book, it needed to keep that one point of view because the whole story was contained within Frances and about Frances. And I think if you started to go into Daniel and Aled or even Carys, it would have taken all the mystery away, and that was very much a centre point of the book. And I think once you started to find out what had happened in Aled's past and what the story behind sort of University was, it would have taken a lot of the impact from the finale, if you like, away. So I think that the one point of view was the best way to go on this, and I didn't feel like it was getting too much. I didn't feel like I wanted a break from Frances as a character, So yeah, I think it was the best way to go, and yeah, it would have definitely affected the outcome if they'd had more than one viewpoint. I'm kind of glad she didn't do that.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. I as well prefer generally books with more than one viewpoint because I just think it breaks the book up a bit. And like, if you don't like one character, you can move on to someone else. But I really liked the one viewpoint. I feel like it was Frances's story, and it would have been a different story if you'd taken it away from her. And I liked her character and her story, and I liked being in her head. So I was fine with the one viewpoint. I really enjoyed it actually. I wouldn't have liked it, I think, as much if it had been multiple viewpoints.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it just felt really right for it just to if you have had a point of view of one other character, who do you think you would have been?
I think I would quite like to have read it from Rain's point of view, actually. I know she wasn't initially, she didn't seem like much of she wasn't the main character, but towards the end, especially when they went to Cambridge and when they went then to London to find Caris, I think it would have been interesting from the start to get an entirely different point of view on the story and just kind of seeing Frances change from an outsider's point of view. So, I mean, I don't think I would have liked it to be Aled or Caris, because I think it would have taken too much of the mystery away. So I think the Rain would have given a completely different perspective, so it would have been quite an interesting one, I think, for her.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Rain was a character that, I was the same. I didn't think much of her, and then she definitely grew on me and ended up being one of my favourites, actually, because I just thought she was just so lovely, like driving her friends around everywhere. And I would have really liked her. I think the outsider's perspective is good, or maybe Daniel's, I guess. But yeah, no, not Aled or Caris. I think that would have taken the mystery away too much.
Yeah, I actually really agree. I think I like the idea of having an outsider's perspective, because I think that's in quite a lot of it's quite common in books to have someone else sort of involved in the story, but not like an omniscient sort of reader, like narrator or something, because they can see it but they're not involved entirely. And I liked her character. She was really nice. So relating back to the point of view thing, did you enjoy the use of transcripts from university and the texts and like Twitter messages? Did you think that added a lot to the story, or did it take away?
The transcripts originally, I was kind of like, okay, I guess I kind of see what she's reading or what she's into, but for me at first it didn't add that much. But then I think as the story went on, and then obviously you get the episodes that are going along with the timeline, and so you're kind of seeing, it helped us see where Aled was, I guess, when they weren't friends anymore. So that kind of helped. But I think it became more relevant as the story went on. But I enjoyed all the Twitter and Tumblr messages and everything. I thought they were good, and it's better to just see it than have her like telling you what they're saying.
Yeah, I was the same. I liked the Twitter and Tumblr messages. I wasn't sure about the transcripts from university, just because she did explain kind of what the concept was behind it, but initially when I was reading them, they didn't make an awful lot of sense, so I have to admit I did kind of skim them, so it may be that I just missed something key in those. But I mean, I think towards the end, when it became apparent who February Friday was, they made a lot more sense, and if I hadn't finished it so close to this, I may have gone back and reread the transcripts and they would have made a lot more sense, but I think initially it was a bit over my head, so it detracted from the story, so I didn't read them properly, I guess.
Yeah. See, because I really like these kind of podcasts. Like the one she makes references to quite a bit is Welcome to Night Vale, and that is like one of my favourite things ever. I absolutely adore it. So when I got the transcripts, I personally really liked them, even though I kind of didn't understand them. I liked that I didn't really get them, because that's the whole kind of thing about it. They don't really make sense. They're just a bit crazy, and I like that kind of, for me, that broke it up, rather than having a different point of view. Those kind of transcripts, like, sort of took me out of it just for a little bit and then put me back in, and it was still kind of relevant. And then later on, obviously, with the February Friday mystery, I think that I thought it was really good. I really liked them. So now just a more general question. Did you enjoy the overall plot with Aled and Caris and Aled's mum?
I still didn't get what was with Aled's mum, what her problem was. I when you got to the end of it, it made a little bit more sense. But I think that because the story was Francis and Aled, you kind of felt like towards the end his mum was a bit crazy, but they didn't really explain any more than that. So it would have been, I guess, it would have been nice to know maybe a bit more about his mum's background and why she was the way she was. It just felt a little bit like she was the antagonist, and towards the end when everything was resolved, she was kind of written out. I didn't feel like she got a full enough explanation for why she did the things she did. So I would like to have seen a little bit more maybe about the mum and why she was the way she was. So maybe a little bit shortchanged, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think she was a bit like, yeah, I think she wasn't expanded on as much as she could have been. I just felt like I was like, what are her motivations? Like, we kind of got an explanation, but it felt like it was a surface one and not like okay, but why does she want her kids to be like these perfect children?
Yeah, the stuff she did to Aled was so horrible, like so horrible. And you think there's got to be some kind of deep psychological reason why you do that to your child, and I just didn't feel like we got one, or even a hint of one really. But like you said, I mean, yeah, there's motivation. She wants her kids to succeed, which is kind of admirable in a way. But why she went about it the way she did wasn't kind of explained sufficiently, I guess. To me, I'd like to read a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I just, it was a bit weird. And I kind of a bit odd, but the fact that it wasn't explained kind of did make me think it was something a bit more psychological rather than having like an actual motive, like I don't know, like she wanted to do what they are doing and it was like she wanted to live her life through them, something like that.
Yeah.
And the fact that it didn't do something like that, I just went, okay, it's psychological. And then it just made me more scared because I was like, well, maybe she needs help. Can someone help her? Is that and you probably shouldn't do for an antagonist, and especially because the book was over, and I was like, but what is she doing now? How is she? How are they?
I think because there was just the one viewpoint with Frances, it would have been quite hard to explain because you'd have had to almost go to the mum's viewpoint, or Carol was her name, to go to her viewpoint, because even her kids didn't understand why she did it. So I think it would have been quite difficult to get that explanation in there. But I would have liked something, I guess, maybe through Frances's mum. I don't know how she would have done it, but it would have been nice to get some kind of, not resolution, but explanation, I guess.
Yeah. But aside from that, the whole mystery with how or why Karis disappeared, I like that, and I like how it kind of explored that even if you don't go to university and you don't do good at grades, there is so much you can still do, which I think is kind of the moral of the story, I guess, that you just shouldn't have to feel pressured into doing what's expected or what's the norm. You can do, like, as long as you're happy and you're doing something you like, then it's fine. And so I like that. I like the mystery, and it was a good mystery.
I really liked the whole university thing because, like, I personally went to uni because I felt pressured to go to uni and then dropped out. I'm going again now but that was on my terms, and when I first went it wasn't on my terms, and so when I found out that's what the book was about, I was like, oh my god, that's so cool, because I feel like in so many books it's just like, I'm going to uni, that's just what everyone does, and I was just like, that's not what everyone does. And you can have a great life, you don't have to go to university, and I know so many people who are successful who haven't been, so I think it's good to show teenagers that that's not the only path. And that's okay.
And I like the fact that Alice kind of included all the different types. Like you had one character, like her and Frances and Daniel wanting to both go to Cambridge, and kind of Frances wanted to do it for kind of the wrong reasons. Daniel wanted to do it because he liked his subject, and he actually wanted to do it for the right reasons, I guess. So you had someone who went through it and then said, this actually isn't for me, and just did something else they loved. Some person who went to university and did what was the norm and was happy, and someone who dropped out and then was still happy. And so it kind of just shows every sort of situation and different side of it, which I really liked.
Yeah, there was no universities right or wrong. It was right for some people but not right for others. So yeah, it was a nice way of putting it, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Getting my notebook out. So I'm moving on to the characters now. Did you enjoy the characters overall? Because there weren't that many, I don't think. There were quite a few to them, but overall the most characters kind of developed well. But did you actually like them, or did any of them kind of annoy you at all?
apart from Carol, I don't think any of them necessarily annoyed me. And I mean, you're meant to not like her, so that's fine. Like, at one point with Aled, I think I was getting a bit frustrated with him, but not like, it wasn't his fault. It was just like the situation was frustrating. And I was just like, just talk to each other. But no, I liked all of them, I think. None of them particularly annoyed me.
Yeah, I'm the same. There was nobody in there that I didn't want to read about, or when you saw the name came up, you kind of rolled your eyes or anything like that. So yeah, it was a good group of characters. I mean, Aled, at times I think I felt he was a bit of a cliche in that he had all his the quirky bands he wore and dyeing his hair and this kind of stuff, and that to me was the only time I got a sense of maybe it felt like somebody was writing what they thought a 17-year-old kind of podcast person would be like, and would their mannerisms. So that was the only time for me. Occasionally, I thought he got a little bit too much, but generally, I liked him as a character.
Yeah, I agree. I don't remember not liking anyone, obviously except for Carol. And they all did feel very three-dimensional, I guess. Like they all had kind of flaws and good things, and they didn't feel at all like they were just there for one purpose and they weren't going to give them a background. Everyone had a background, which is something I like in a book, because otherwise I don't like when characters are kind of just there to just help the plot along, or just one little thing. So
I think that's why I quite like Rain towards the end, because I think a lot of times in YA, especially the ones I tend to read, female characters just seem to be there to prop up the main female character, if you like. And towards Rain was almost seemed a bit like just one of the group of friends, but towards the end she was a lot more than that. So she didn't end up feeling she was just there to advance the plot or just to show you something about Frances. She was an organic character on her own who actually ended up being quite important to the plot, which I wouldn't have seen coming in the first few chapters. So yeah, I thought they were all well written, and nobody stood out as being there for the sake of the plot or anything.
Yeah, I like the characters. We've already discussed Bessie, so I will skip that one. What did you think of the relationship between Aled and Frances, and kind of the whole fact that throughout the whole novel there isn't really any romance other than Aled and Daniel, but that's not explored really. You have it's kind of a subplot, I guess. But what did you think of that?
I just was like, I really like books about friendships, and I remember one chapter, and I think I actually took a picture of it and sent it to my friend, like, God bless or something like that, because she's like, yeah, we are a boy and a girl, but nothing's gonna happen between us. I was like, thank you. Like, she was like, this isn't a love story, it's not gonna be, that's not what we're here for. And I was just like, that's great. And I thought their friendship, especially at the beginning, was so genuine and sweet and healthy, and just they really cared about each other. It was really nice. I liked their friendship.
Yeah, I think I picked that exact same bit in the book as well. It was very 500 Days of Summer. It's it's a guy and a girl, but it's not a love story. And I really, really like that, because it's so rare in YA books, or any books really, to find a guy and a girl that don't end up falling in love. And it was a really, I think the way their friendship was written was really nice, and it felt really natural. And it reminded me of how you are when you hang out with people initially. So it was, I really liked it, and I think it would have ruined the story if they'd ended up kind of boyfriend and girlfriend at the end. So I thought it was brilliant. Really, really liked it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And even with the quote, I even like the way she kind of put it in, as if even the character itself knew that it was kind of felt very self-reflexive in the idea that Frances herself knew that it was expected for them to get together, and she was like, seriously, that's not going to happen. And it felt very, very blunt and very kind of humorous, which I thought was really cool.
And I didn't feel like we missed anything out, but with there being no romance. It didn't feel like there was anything missing from the book, with there not really being a romance. It felt like a very whole kind of story, and I really liked that about it. I thought the friendship was just really great, and it was really well done.
Yeah, I was a little, not necessarily worried, but I was a bit kind of wary about because I kind of could guess that Karis would be found at the end. I kind of was like, that's going to happen. And I was a bit wary that they would meet, and Frances and Karis would kind of get back together, and Karis would be like, oh, I didn't mean to be so horrible, I've loved you all along, and blah, blah, blah. So I'm glad that they had that scene when she kissed her, and then she was like, Now this isn't what I want.
No.
I really liked that as well because everyone expects you like the first person you have a crush on. There's always that thing in YA, like the first person you have a crush on or fall in love with is like who you stay with or whatever. And she's like, no, that's not for me. I've moved on. And I was like, that's really great.
Yeah, it worked really well. And I'm kind of nearing the end of my questions now. So, did you enjoy the ending? Both, because I'm kind of counting two endings. The one with the climax ending with the train and her mum and Carol coming down to try and take Aled away, and then also the actual ending when they're on stage at that YouTube convention thing. So yeah, what did you think of that?
I liked it. I thought it was a good ending, and especially it was a nice ending for Aled. It felt like he deserved it after everything that happened in the book. It felt a little bit tacked on, I guess, because there was kind of the climax at the train station, and then it felt like everything was wrapped up. It then just felt a little bit bolted onto the end. So it was a good ending, and I think it was a fitting ending, and it was really nice to see that he left university, but it didn't mean he was a failure or his life was over. It meant he was just going on to something else that he really enjoyed. But it just felt a little bit abrupt, I think, because it didn't follow the flow of the rest of the chapters that preceded it. It kind of just sat on the end. But I liked it. I just felt it a little bit, it felt like an epilogue, you know.
Yeah, I felt the same. I liked it, and I thought it was a nice ending. And like you said, Aled deserved everything and everything. But yeah, the ending felt a bit abrupt. I think I remember getting to the end of the book and being like, "What? There's so many pages left." I was like, "How are they gonna wrap it all up or something like that?" And it did wrap up in the end, but I was like a little bit concerned getting to the end. I was like, "There's not a lot left." But yeah, I did like the ending. It was like fitting to the story and everything.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. To be honest, I have not much else to add. But yeah, and the last question I had was, would you want / read a sequel if there was one?
I wouldn't not want to read a sequel, if that makes sense, but I think the story was so contained and it was ended and wrapped up, I wouldn't feel the need to read a sequel, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it works well enough as a standalone, and I think it doesn't need a sequel. I probably would read a sequel if it came out, because I like the characters and I like her writing enough that I would just do it anyway. Yeah. But I don't think it necessarily needs it. I know she's done novellas, I think, for some of the characters from her other books. I'd probably read a novella. I think a novella like about maybe Rain or one of the other characters might be good or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
I think novella could work.
Yeah, I wouldn't want a sequel to myself, but if there was one, I would be the first to get it and buy it and read it. But I wouldn't actually want one because it obviously as a standalone it does wrap up really well. So yeah, those are all my questions. So I will stop the broadcast. So we won't be live anymore. Okay, so bye.
Bye.